Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to Project Porcupine programming video. Can't call these tutorials anymore, because the project moves so much on its own that it actually takes me a while every time I sit down to work on Project Porcupine again to sort of re-upload the status of the project in my head. And because it's not just me working on it in this sort of like very linear sort of contiguous fashion, I don't think that tutorials would work the same way as before, because whenever I load it up, there's going to be a bunch of new stuff and people may not understand the context of what's going on there, because so many people are now working on this game, which is why it looks so fantastic. And there's a bunch of new features, like these new little UI pop-ups and things like that. Things are really progressing forward and everyone's doing amazing work. But in playing with it, I did discover a slight glitch, and so I want to go through the process of fixing it. So, of course, the very first thing that we do to start off with is we make sure that we have pulled in the latest build from the GitHub website, which I'm already set up with. So I was able to do a pull from the upstream master, or you could just do a fresh download. You know, whether you're using the command line or the GitHub desktop, that's fine. Just make sure you're up to date. And so here's the sort of little glitch that I found. If I go and start constructing some floor over here, now hopefully it will do it. I'm going to find out in a second here. And there we go. You see how everyone starts doing this backwards moonwalk over here, right? Most of the time when they move around, they face properly. So let's say I tell you to build a floor up top. To get up there, people will indeed face in the correct direction to walk all the way there. But then once they start working, their facing doesn't always update. There was one facing change over here because he actually had to walk from tile to tile. But somewhere in the movement system, it doesn't necessarily update that final little step. I think because tiles can be worked on from adjacent tiles, and I think that's part of it. I'm not sure. So I'm like, all right, let's go and figure out how to fix this. And this is actually a good way to represent how, if you want to make a change, how would you go about it? Because I am no longer familiar with the structure of the program. It's moved too much. Literally, things have been moved into different new folders, but things have been broken up. The character is handled by a proper state machine now, which means a lot of things have changed. So, and I never implemented the facing change. That's something that someone else did. So I want to see if I can figure out how I might be able to fix that. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to open up the actual character behavior itself, which is already open over here. Let me go and remove the search. You can see I was already hunting around to try to figure that out. So what I'm going to try to do is duplicate that process. So this is the class that holds the character information. We can actually see references to facing over here as an enum. But if you're trying to look for the actual movement behavior, that has been correctly removed from the character class itself. Instead, the character class is implemented as a state machine. A state machine is like a web of behaviors. We're going to do this job, and then something can trigger a change from one state to another. And it's very easy to implement with delegates or actions or something like that, where you can sort of just replace the current function that gets called when, like every frame, based on the state. I also like the fact that there's a bit of a state queue as well, which is kind of interesting. List of global states that always run. So there's a couple of different ways to handle that, and then you can see here the current state, which would then be executed. And we can always take a look at what the state class is. It's an abstract class, which means you never instantiate the state class. Instead, things have to be subclassed from this. And actually, there is a folder of states in here. So we already get a sense of like, okay, there's some stuff going on over there. In particular, if we take a look at the move state in here, this is the regular movement, we can see that there is a reference in here to character.faceTile. In fact, the character class has a function called faceTile. It's very simple. You tell it what the next tile the character will walk into, and then we'll update the character's facing based on that. Now, one thing we can do is we could always right click on faceTile over here and say find references. This will tell you every file that calls faceTile or has reference. The first one is actually this itself. It's the declaration of faceTile. But the next reference in here is the one and apparently only place where character.faceTile is called. So that's right over here. Character.faceTile, next tile over here. Now, the character's facing gets updated here. Clearly, this is not quite sufficient. There's a situation where the character's facing does not get updated. And so what I think is happening is this check over here. We have arrived at our destination. Therefore, we are not updating our character facing. Now, what's interesting to me about the timing is that you feel like it should work most of the time, but clearly it doesn't. And I'm not entirely sure why, because again, I haven't looked at all of this. It feels like, I guess the problem is this is when our percentage gets over 1. Yeah, all right. What's happening is here, this is when we complete a move. When we have gone from one tile to another tile, this is when our movement percentage goes above 1, at which point we check to see if we've reached the destination. But what's interesting about this is that's not when the character facing should be updated. In my head, it should be updated as soon as we know what our target tile is. And here's what I mean by that, right? Here's what it's completing a move. So the way their movement system works is our character has a current tile and it has a next tile. Okay? Now, if the character is standing still, those two are the same. If they're not the same, it's because the character is moving. And next tile is always like an adjacent tile. It's not like our goal tile. It is the next one entirely. So we set next tile to be, say, the tile to our right. We set movement percentage to 0, and every frame we increase movement percentage by a certain amount based on our character's movement speed. And we animate the character sliding from current tile to next tile. But it's only when the movement percentage reaches 100% that we change our current tile to be equal to the next tile. And then we say that we enter it, and then we find out what their next tile should be, if there should be a next one. But to me, this means the only time we update the facing is when we arrive in a tile. And if the tile is the last one in our mission, then we don't update our facing because it happens here. The very first thing we could do is we could change the character facing call to go above, right over here. The problem with this is it's possible at this point, if it is our last tile, then next tile is basically the tile that we're in. So how do you face the tile that you're in? I mean, in that case, it doesn't matter. Normally, when you arrive at a tile, when you arrive at your final destination, it's okay that our facing doesn't get updated because there shouldn't be anything to it. I think then, because this is a little weird, like you should correctly not update your facing when you've reached your destination. But I think what should happen is we shouldn't update the facing after we've arrived in a tile. We should update the facing the second we have been issued a movement, which is to say that our next tile is not equal to our current tile, in a sense. So now I have to figure out, okay, how do we actually initiate one of these moves, and what does that represent? Well, the job state actually answers that question for me. The job state is the thing that handles when we have a job, and it goes through and checks, is our job finished? Yes, it is. Oh, well then let's just abandon this. Okay. Next, do we have all the materials we need? Okay, well then maybe we should do some stuff. And what it does is it actually sets a new state, which is that we have to haul some goods over here. Okay, that's good. The next thing we do is we check to see, are we where we want to be? And if the answer is no, then we try to move there. And we do that this way. We get a path to our destination, and then we set the character's state. In that state machine, we set our current state to be a movement state. So from here, for this character, and we want to go, this is the function that we use to test if we have successfully reached our destination. Like, we can take a look at this, right? When you create a new move state, it needs a character, it needs a goal evaluator, which is, again, a great implementation. You guys are awesome. This sort of generic delegate kind of function that this is just a function that gets called for every tile. It says, is this a tile we want to be at? Is this a tile we want to be at? And then we can just feed in any kind of function to that, which is great. We give it a path, and then we tell it the next state. So this is how we create a new one. So we save the goal evaluator. We say in a variable called has reached destination. This is a function. Has reached destination is going to be effectively a function we can call, and we save the path. And then on every update, we run this. Now, what's interesting to me is, where does next tile get set? Oh, I guess when we enter the state. when we enter the state. If the character's selected, we do something maybe like we show the path finding, which is quite a cool function, actually. We make sure if our path is null or empty, then we've probably finished. We need to make sure that check to see if the starting tile is in the path or not, in which case we get rid of it. And then over here, we set the next tile. So this is where we initially set next tile. To me, we should set the facing here. Now, it's not going to be sufficient to do it here. Basically, whenever next tile gets changed, that's when we want to set the facing. So we already do that over here because next tile gets changed if we have reached our tile. This is in the actual update function. When we have reached our tile, we changed next tile, which means we also update our facing. Well, I think we also need to do that when we start the move, because if ever a move only requires moving one tile, it doesn't update properly. So I want to do that right here. Right here, I want to update our facing when we set next tile over here. Now, we could override, we could do all kinds of different things. I don't think this is only ever going to get called twice in what is a relatively simple class. I don't think we have to do like a special function or anything like that for like update next tile or that. Although we could. Actually, that might be a really good idea. Let's go and set a private function called update next tile. All it does is what this is doing already. So basically, we can cut this out and do this. Oh, it's a void. And then here we call update next tile. Or maybe like get next tile. Advance next tile. You know what? I kind of like that. Advance next tile. Yes. Because that's what it does. It's changing next tile. It's advancing it down the path. And then the same thing will happen here. It's literally the same thing. It grabs the first tile off our path, then removes that tile from the path, and then faces things. So we can just say advance next tile, like that. And then if we go and run our program again, assuming we haven't made a mistake. Come on and play. Come on and play. The loading has to read up a bunch of graphics. And then things aren't necessarily still optimized the way we want in the end, but it's getting pretty good. Let's go ahead and do this. So now we've got a list of jobs, and our character is going to move over here, update these tiles, and you can see our character, it's still not quite perfect, but it's a lot better. We're not getting any sort of weird moonwalking, because what's happening is our character can work tiles while being adjacent, right? So if I give a little pause, oh, that's not quite the right place, and I'm going to get rid of the maximize on right here. What's going to happen here is this character, I believe he's moving south, so he's probably about to do this tile, but then he'll be able to do these adjacent ones from where he's standing. Well, I think it might be nice if our character turned to face those tiles as he did the work. Now, that's not a moving job, right? Let's think about this. At this point in our job state, so our character's just finished working that tile, say, to the south, and he's about to work the tile, say, to his east. So he's grabbed a whole new job off the queue, he started a new job state, and we get to here, job is tile at job worksite. The current tile that we're in, is this somewhere we can be to work the job? And in this function, the job has a flag. Every job has a flag that says whether you're allowed to work the job from the adjacent spot or not. Some jobs, you have to stand on a job spot to do the work. And in others, you can stand next to the spot to do the work. And in case of laying down the floor, the job spot is the actual tile of the floor that we want to build, but we set is adjacent equals true. So what's happening here is this is returning true right away, which means we can work the job. However, when we move from working the job to the south to working the job to the east, we're not updating our facing because the only time we're updating the facing is when we're moving. Now, I think I'm quite happy with the move state. I think this is a good fix. I think it is solid. And actually, this reminds me, I never actually created a branch because I was trying to do my example here, and I was showing this without doing it properly. So I'm making changes to our code over here. I've made a change to a file, but I'm currently on the master branch. Ooh, I don't want that. I need to make sure I check out a new branch called job facing fix. There we go. So now I've created a new branch, and on this branch, I still have the one modified file, but that's good. That way I can keep things properly organized because I can check these changes. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check in this first change. I use git add -a, just adds all changed files. And then I'm going to commit my changes over here. And I could do it in line like this, or you know what, I'll do it in Vim. That's going to be okay. And so this is, this fixes facing when only moving a single tile. Actually, it's more than that. It's more than that. It's change facing at the start of a move. Because otherwise, I'm sure, I'm mostly sure, that whenever our character moves, I'm willing to bet the very first move our character ever does is a bit of a moonwalk. So let's say he's facing north, and in fact, when the character spawns, the character starts by facing north. I'm willing to bet if he then moves south, he probably did a bit of a moonwalk south and then faced the correct way. In fact, we should test that. Let me take one little second here. If we go to our move state, and what I'm going to do, I'm still going to have this function over here, which actually could be adjusted that way. I'm just going to temporarily comment out this. This is the advanced next tile. Yeah, let me comment this out and then put this part back in. So this is the old way where our facing doesn't get updated right away. So if I were to run this, I'm willing to bet we're going to see a backward slide if we pay attention. Let's see if we can notice it. Because actually, I wasn't even intending to fix that, but I bet you that was a side effect. So right now he's facing north. So I'm going to tell our character, why didn't I get a UI? Let me just unmaximize and remaximize? Oops, that's the scene. How come the user interface broke? Don't maximize on play. Oh, my view is scaled. Whoops, that's what's going on here. See this 1.6? There we go. All right. So what I'm going to do, our character's facing north, is I'm going to tell him to build a floor here, and let's try to pay real close attention. I think he'll backslide and then turn around. There's that little bit of lag when you've set the first job. I don't know if there's a good way to avoid that. Hold on. Let's try this again. Let's try this again here. A little bit of lag when he's selecting his first job. Let me just click this. Yeah, I don't know why it's always like that with that little second of lag. That's very annoying, but I'm almost positive that he would indeed be doing that. So we have corrected that, which is good. Let me just go and do this. So, where's my little, over here. Change facing at the start of a move. So that's going to be the name of the fix, but then I can put in a note over here that says something like corrects a moonwalk at the start of a move, corrects a moonwalk for one tile moves as well. I mean, this is sort of like the side effects of what each one of those are. I guess it'll be happier with the space. There we go. For a series of one tile moves, i.e. installing flooring. There we go. So these are notes for the fix. The actual fix is change facing at the start of the move. That's what this one is. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So I've committed this change. But in this branch, I want to keep doing a little bit more work on this branch as part of a job facing fix as a whole. And that is, I want to make it so that when we work a job, I want to face the correct way. Now, really what we want to do here is, if we're here, we're doing work, right? If we're here, we're not yet at the tile. So this is, are we at the tile's job site? If it's false, then we have to walk towards the tile. But then if we get here, we can start doing the work. So when we do the work, we should face the tile that we're doing it, assuming that we're not adjacent. So the question is, well, I guess we're going to do it in here. We're not going to do it as part of job do work. We're going to put in a thing. We want to make sure the character faces the job tile, but only if the job tile is not the same as what the character is standing on. So we want to do something like if job dot tile is not equal to character dot curtile, then what does this mean? This means we're not standing. We aren't standing on the job spot itself, so make sure to face it. So really what we're doing at this point is we're saying character dot face tile job dot tile. Now the one downside with this is this does run every frame that our character is working on a job. So we want a space there. And really we should only have to face it once. That being said, this is a microscopic little thing. We change the facing here. We set the facing to be correct, prioritizing like east-west. So if the tile's to our right, we face east. If it's to our left, we face west. We only face north or south if it's literally above us. So for our diagonals, we're always going to be facing either to the right or to the left, right? If it's diagonal and up, we're going to be facing to the right, which I think is okay. I think that feels fine. So maybe we don't want this to run every frame. I don't know. But in any case, let's give this a go. So we'll do the maximize on play. And so what should happen now is while our character is standing in place, because he's adjacent to a lot of tiles, he should still spin around and face things. So let's find out if that's true. Construction, floor. So drag out a whole bunch. I'm going to do that first little bit of extra lag, which is a little unhappy making. There you go. See? He turns to face. And I think this feels much better. It feels natural that facing to the right works even when it's above and below. On the other hand, even if you just turn to face north or south at the right time, that would be okay, although I think this is preferable. But more importantly, he's not just static while working all 9 tiles around him, which feels very, very weird. So I like this as a secondary fix. So what we've done is we've made a change to another file, or a pair of them. I think this move state should not have been modified again. I must have a slight difference in my spacing. So let me, first of all, let's find out what the difference is. Git diff. I'm going to check to see what change I made to the move state file here in this, because it was not my intention to make a significant change. Yeah, so there's a white space fix, which is pretty legitimate. I think I had an extra space over here. Move state, line 153. Okay. Well, the numbering seems a little off. Saying line 153, which I would have thought was here. But yeah, it's an extra space. I must have had an extra one, which is legitimate and fine. I could have a second commit for that, but it's incredibly minor, so I'm going to say that that's perfectly fine. But most notably, if we check the diff in the job state, there we go. So we've added in a series of lines right over here to update the facing. So I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all the files. I could decide to just add this one, and I could revert the changes to move state, but this getting rid of that blank line is correct. So I'm going to go ahead and commit it in, and it's so minor that, because what I could do is do 2 separate commits, one for each file here, so I could put in a note, but it's irrelevant. So I'm going to add those files to the stage, and again, if I check the status, you know, they're green because they have been staged. So then what I will do is I will commit. And again, you could do a -M and type a message in here, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that off, which for me loads me into the Vim editor. And so I'm going to put in the message here that what we're doing is face in direction of job tile while performing work. There we go. That's what this fix does. So I'm going to go ahead and commit that. Okay. So that's all done. There's no changes here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this branch to my my personal GitHub repo. Well, it's been a while since I've done this. I can just do origin job facing fix, which will correctly push it out to the website. So this is origin. This is my personal one. There you go. So I've pushed that. And in fact, if I go and load up my repository, hold on, I'll bring it up to the main screen in just a second here. Yeah, good. So if I swing this over here, this is my personal repository, Quilliteam Project Porcupine, which is why I have pushed this build there. Although I would get this message even if I was on the official Team Porcupine repo, that I would still get a note that I've pushed out this particular branch. And what I can do now is I can compare and pull request. It'll tell me what the changes are. I'm able to... This would merge successfully as is. There are no conflicts, which is great. Although right now I'm just putting in a pull request. I'm telling the project managers that, hey, this is something I'm putting in. So it automatically, by default, titles this based on my branch, which is job facing fix. So I think that's fine. Actually, I was going to say something like, and I can put an extra note here, but there's really nothing. Actually, this is really a general facing fix. One tile movement and job facing. There we go. Put in a few details. Fixes an issue where the character waits until the end of a tile move to change facing, which led to moonwalking at the start of pathing and is especially prominent during one tile paths, like during pathfinding that is only one tile long. Additionally, makes the character an additional change, because there are two changes, they're just really highly related. An additional change makes the character face in the direction of the job tile for adjacent position jobs. This in particular, this fixes some funny movement during floor construction. There we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and create this pull request. The other thing you want to do at this point, before you create the pull request, is confirm that your commits only include the commits that you're looking to do. If there's a whole bunch of extra stuff in here, maybe it's because you didn't pull in the correct changes. Maybe it's because you need to do a rebase or all kinds of different things to get rid of some additional little commits. Now, one thing on our project, we have it configured such that these commit messages, so no matter how many of these individual commits I have in my branch, they are set to become squashed together into a single commit for the project itself. But these messages will be retained in the actual commit notes, which I'll show you in just a moment. So this is me. I can confirm, two commits, 2 file changes, which I could go and check to see what all the changes were. I'm going to go ahead and create the pull request as is here, like that. So now, this is in the official Team Porcupine, Project Porcupine. I have this pull request that myself or any maintainer can bring in. In fact, I'm tempted to just leave this as is, but I want to go through the process one more time to show everyone how to make this change. So I've got this note here. I kind of feel like zooming out because I was like feeling a little claustrophobic there. So I've got this note here. Anyone can review these commits to see what the actual commits were, and more importantly, perhaps you can check the file changes over here. It made some changes to reviewing code. Okay. Start a review, leave some comments in the code. You can then leave an overall comment while approving or requesting changes. That's very handy. But we can see what the actual changes were, which is you can see here. Well, more importantly, the move state one is the most probably the most important part of it. is that, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. So here's in our job, we check to see when we're actually working the job, we just change the facing to face the tile if we're not just standing on the job tile itself. And in move state, you can see that these 3 lines have been replaced with advanced next tile. And over in the second function, which is where we enter into it, we replace these 2 lines with advanced next tile, which all it does is repeat those 2 lines while include the face tile, which was already there. So we really didn't make a change here. We're just using this function because we're repeating the code twice. And that way, if later on there's another adjustment that has to be made for how we read the next tile, we don't do it in one place and then forget the other. We just do this one little function here, which includes the facing tile. So we've got that. So it's a pretty easy fix, pretty simple, not much to talk about over here. People could test. In fact, it's very encouraged, even if you're not a programmer, you can go and test these. It's very easy for you to do. You should have this reference over here down at the bottom. You won't have the squash and merge button. That's just something maintainers will have, but you can pull these changes in, even if they haven't been merged. You can pull the changes in from it effectively from my branch, which is kind of neat. If you, for example, if I expand this, it'll actually show me what the commands are, but anyone can pull in. So from my copy of the repository, github.com's Quill18 Project Porcupine, anyone can pull in the branch called job facing fix. You can pull that into your copy of the project on your computer. You can run it, make sure that it works okay, and then leave a little comment that says, oh, I tested this on mine, it works great. It's quite nice actually if you can leave a +1 that way, or you can +1 over here, add a reaction, and then leave a little note that confirms that it works on you, because the maintainers don't necessarily have time to pull in all these pull requests tested on their machine. Luckily, this is a very simple set of changes that it's pretty obvious that, exactly what it does and doesn't have a lot of room for mistakes. Although, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me that much if there was one, but I tested on mine and it seems to work okay. So I'll go ahead and show you the squash and merge over here to show you that the check-in, the actual final commit message will be facing fix 1 tile movement and job facing, which is the name of the pull request I made, followed by the pull request number over here, 1492. And then you can see here in the comments to this, it includes all my actual commit messages, this as well as my extra little notes and that one over there. So all the notes are preserved. Although sometimes the maintainer will go and clean this up or minimize it, if some of the fixes are things like, oh, fix a typo. Well, we don't need that in the notes, so we could trim that down. But that keeps it nice and clean. Just a single commit for this pull request, a 1-to-1 ratio, which I love, while we keep all the notes. So I will go ahead and confirm the squash and merge. And there we go. Pull request successfully merged and closed. There we go. So there's some additional things. We've got a bunch of automated testing to make sure that all these things properly can compile, and it doesn't break the project on a critical way. If you look at the pull request, that's what these little check marks are. So this is a build was successfully passed, where if we look over here, the build is not passing. In addition, and I don't think we've got a pop-up for that, but sometimes, like if I look over here, oh no, it has no conflicts. Sometimes a branch will have conflicts because other people have made changes in between yours, so that's something else to take a look at. Anyway, I don't feel like this sort of video is the path to the future well, not just Project Porcupine, but rather for Quill18 Creates. I think that this type of video is not the path to the future, because honestly, there's just a limited number of little jobs and fixes that I can think of that fit well within this context. Certainly if I look at the project and there's something I can think of, if I look at one of the open issues, I'm like, you know what, I can do this, and I can do this in video format, that's good. But also it takes me a while to make the videos, so in the time it takes me to make one episode, if it's a big fix that'll take multiple episodes to do, in the time it takes me to make one episode, someone could have probably easily fixed the problem by then, just because of the timing that works out. So I'm trying to think about exactly the direction of Quill18 Creates. It will continue to happen. It just might be videos not always related to Project Porcupine, which actually I think is a good way to go. I think that's actually a really wonderful way to go. So if you do have any comments, please leave them down below. But other than that, hey, thank you everyone who keeps contributing to this project. You guys are crushing it. The game looks great. Lots of changes being incorporated all the time. Lots of discussion. There's a lot of people who are active. I realize not as many people are active now as right when it was fresh and shiny as new. And that's always going to be the case with this. But Appreciate the effort that some people are still putting into this pretty regularly. You can see other changes being made over here. I mean, in assets, the latest change was 2 minutes ago. That would be me. Most of the changes are going to be here. You see, 21 hours ago. So a lot of update managers and things like that. And actually, I love the structure that you guys are implementing in this, because I think it's keeping things well organized for a project that's going to get quite big. This is the kind of game that's got a fair amount of complexity in it. And so I think you guys are doing a swell job. Also, thanks for updating the title page over here. You guys are fantastic. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Thank you to all our August patrons, i.e. people who pledged in August and who are supporting videos from September through to early October. And especially these Mike Check supporters. We got Ole Peter Talgo, Adam Conway, Drazion, Jan Torivel, Adjective, Michael McClintock, Aaron Toyson, Craig Mortel, Julian Auger-Lafont, Marius Fieldvold, Speedy Savant, Steven Stager, Valiant Cake Fiend, Wes Oldenboiving, Jason Yanity, Kale the Quick, Neil Blakey Milner, and Yukofin, and everyone who's watched, shared, favorited, and subscribed. Thanks for watching. See you next time.